Do we have any questions before we get started? It is very likely that after this game, or maybe the game after that, that we will be going into an extended downtime. So we're doing one this game, but we could be looking at 3 more years of downtime after that. So possibly more time to accomplish larger goals. And so I would like you guys to think about what you want to do during that time, so that when we do get to blue booking through all of that, kind of like with the preludes, then you have an idea of how you might want to go about stuff. So that's on the horizon. But for now, we will get started here and get into this. So it is late May in 1455 in St. Albans, a small but growing town just north of London by about 20 miles. There's still blood in the streets from the battle just a night ago. In total, less than a couple hundred men fell in battle between both sides, and most have been buried throughout the day. Although relatively few died, several high-ranking nobles of the Lancasters did fall in battle, including Henry Percy, the Earl of Northumberland, and Lord Clifford of Skipton, an ally of the Percys, and most notably the Duke of Somerset, Edmund Beaufort, who Robert briefly attempted to build relations with about a year ago. King Henry and his ally Stafford, the Duke of Buckingham, have been taken prisoner. Now both of you, Robert and Elined, have been instructed to appear before Ragna tonight for an audience. And she is, for the moment, staying at the largest inn of St. Albans. And so you arrive early in the evening and are escorted by knights, led by Mr. Sharp down into the basement, and he dismisses them. The basement of this inn is very simple and humble, much like the town. Mostly wooden walls and floors, many racks of barrels hoisted up, crates of supplies, grains. And as the two of you are being walked down the hall by Mr. Sharp through the basement, you pass through a narrow hallway, and opposite you, coming towards you, is a procession of knights. Elined, you recall them being in the reserve. They're leaving the basement, it seems like. Most of them still wearing heavy chain hauberks and gambesons, holding their helmets, all of them very pale in pallor. And they nod to you, respectfully, Elined, seeming to defer to your station.
She will nod in return.
No such respect is given to Robert. But Mr. Sharp leads the two of you back, beyond them, where Ragna is standing and waiting, accompanied by her bodyguard, Lydia, and her child, Jesper. And the group of them appraise you as Mr. Sharp stands off to the side.
Elined will stand and curtsy towards the prince as she...
She nods to you, then looking to Robert.
Likewise, Robert will show the proper respects.
Her eyes go back to Elined. The battle is won. Beaufort lies dead, and the king is feeble-minded once more. We have done well here, and you ought to be commended for decisive action.
Well, it was all within my duty.
The Duke is all but certain to regain title as Lord Protector of the realm now. This presents us with a position of strength. I could not help but notice, Robert, that you did not join in battle. Sympathy for the Lancasters, or distracted by matters at home, possibly.
I was stationed with the reserves. Thankfully, due to Elined's skill, that was not required.
Yes. Thank God for Elined.
Though, to be fair, even if I wasn't here, you would have still most likely won. The odds were considerably stacked in your favor.
True. They were. However, it does not go unnoticed that an amateur, someone with no business commanding, would certainly have made a debacle of the affair. It is enough for me to see your deed done. I shall not lose any sleep during the day over the loss of some kind. I expect you will be challenged more in the future.
I suspect as much as well.
Her eyes turned back to Robert. You have remained at my court for some time, Lord de Vere. When was the last time you returned home? I imagine it must be quite a few nights now.
It has been some time.
Perhaps it would put you more at ease if you were to return to Lincoln and tend to your estate. You have been at my court paying such close attention to my affairs. I certainly hope whomever you left to manage yours is doing well.
I'm sure things are going well enough there. Gauntlet business does come first.
Gauntlet business, of course. Her gaze lingers on you for some time. That is all I require of you for now, Lord de Vere.
Very well, then. Robert will turn to take his leave, then.
Do take care, she says as you begin to walk away.
But of course. Robert continues.
And Mr. Sharp follows you. And you are escorted back out of the inn, while Elined remains behind. Do you trust him?
So far, he has proven himself the one that can be trusted most. Well, by the princess at least.
She raises an eyebrow faintly.
Though personally, no. But I trust a scarce few people.
Wise. In any event, the world of the kind will recoil at such violence as was displayed here. We must care not to press too much all at once. It may yet be some time before we see the Lancasters rally to arms again, if ever they do. For now, we enjoy some measure of stability.
Or should they foolishly raise arms of the future, it could be better described as the calm before the storm.
She nods. And so we must remain prepared. However, it is possible with this first event that the summer will end without further conflict. The Duke's force, along with Warwick and Salisbury, are likely to disband and return north. However, my personal retinue will remain strong. Should you require an armed force for your purposes, you may request it, pending the purpose.
I will keep that in mind, and that is a very large honor, thank you.
Consider it a well-deserved reward. Those loyal in service to me see their fortunes rise. You have my blessing to go on leave. I require only that you continue to keep me abreast where you go, as to allow my messengers to find you, should you be needed again.
Of course.
Do watch your compatriot there. He seems to have a habit of looking in places he need not.
She pauses for a minute. So that habit has transferred to him, then?
Whom possessed this prior?
Well, I am certain you already know about Cormac and I going into that manor and finding those records that had the little forgery at the end. The forgery was not one of my oaths. It was found as such.
It could be construed as business of the gauntlet, whereas I concern myself that Lord de Vere's peculiar curiosity is far removed from the gauntlet. But I shall let you be the judge.
Of course.
And she kind of bows her head and does a faint gesture with her hand to release you.
And with that, she will leave.
Right. And you leave. Meanwhile, what does Robert do topside?
Suppose he'll wait for Elined.
Alright. Maybe 5-10 minutes after you make your way outside, you see that Elined likewise steps out into the streets of St. Albans, and the two of you are joined again.
Well done in that battle.
No, not quite. I have had more successful victories in the past. And that... I could have easily saved us some forces if I played my hand better.
Still, the results were quite successful. But I'll keep in mind this was not your best performance. Shall we return to our chambers?
Most likely. What time of night is it?
It's very early.
Oh.
I will have you make both make a perception awareness roll. Difficulty 8. This is kind of during your time in St. Albans, walking through the streets. One success from Robert, 2 from Elined. So both of you, kind of throughout the night, faintly sense something tense in the air, and it's very difficult to tell. You may just be sensing the overall dread of a town that just endured a battle where the king's forces were fighting for their lives. But something about the town definitely strikes you as thick with an atmosphere of unnatural dread. Although it's not very clear what the source is.
Since that's the case, and they had that run-in with those Inquisitors a few months, well, about a month back, she's going to be more cautious when she's...
When she's doing what?
When she's out in the town, she's going to be more cautious about it because of their run-in with the Inquisitors a few months back.
Okay.
Is this the same type of unease that surrounded that town, or no?
No, this is different. That felt righteous, like you felt guilty simply being in Canterbury. This seems more ominous and foreboding somehow. And with 2 successes, I'll say that you've not felt this on other battlefields. But the 2 of you make your way back to your quarters. You have some tents set up amidst the armies near the center where it's more protected. Are the 2 of you mostly hunkering down for the day?
Well, when she's out, she will get something to eat to keep herself topped off. But outside of that, she has precious little to do outside of going around and seeing what remains of her forces after the battle.
Alright, how would you like to hunt?
Is there a particularly lively tavern?
The most lively tavern was the tavern inn that you were at, which is called Ye Old Fighting Cocks. Supposedly the oldest tavern in all of England. Right here in St. Albans.
Any taverns outside of that one?
Absolutely. Taverns are a bustling business, and St. Albans has grown much in the last century. There's several others in walking distance. You find the Lower Red Lion. Is probably the next best bet.
Alright. Then, if Robert would like to come along, she's going to do a little poetry performance to get something to eat and keep herself topped off.
Robert certainly will go.
Alright. So you go into this tavern, the Lower Red Lion, and Robert comes with you. How exactly are you hunting off these people in the tavern?
Going into one of the lively groups and chatting them up, regarding them with little tales and bits of poetry.
Alright, charisma expression. Give you a difficulty of 6.
Specialty applies.
Alright, that'd be 4 successes. But because
I only need 1 blood point.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, because you're being careful, I'm gonna cut that in half anyway, just because you don't want to draw too many people away. You're kind of on edge. And when you feed, that's fine, you can take a blood point, you do get a little bit tipsy. But it's really when you feed that you begin to more personally experience this sense of unnatural unease throughout the town, as if it's in the very blood. Robert, with your auspex, you're faintly aware of it, but not quite to the same extent. But yes, Elined, you are able to chat up one of the patrons of the Lower Red Lion, and much like other taverns, there's nothing very difficult or unique to regaling some of these patrons with stories long enough to get them alone or to follow you somewhere and feed on them. And so you're able to do that. Is there anything else you would wish to do tonight? Or Robert?
You would hunt for his 1 blood point as well.
Okay. And how are you hunting? A similar way?
Similar enough of a fashion, yes.
Okay, you can make the same roll, same difficulty. That's a lot of ones.
Such is life.
You're not quite having the same success. You think maybe you're putting it on too thick and you're not able to quite get anybody to follow you anywhere where you can feed, unfortunately.
Robert won't push it. He'll instead just wait until Elined's ready to go. Perhaps this aura of dread is making him feel uncomfortable. He'll turn on his auspex senses and just stay on alert for anything unusual.
Turning on your auspex?
Yes.
Okay. Elined finishes up soon enough, and once you're done, Elined, you come outside and find a vigilant Robert.
Actually, before I go out, can I question one of the people I've been talking to during this to try to find out what all's been going around in the town as of late, since they are but travelers?
Sure. To inquire about the latest events.
Outside of the massive battle, of course.
Outside of the massive battle that just occurred the other day. We'll have you... Might have you make the same roll. Let's see. Yeah, I'll have you make the same roll. Charisma, expression. This one's gonna be difficult. Well, you already got these people talking to you. I'll make a difficulty 5. You've made a good impression. And little bit easier to talk to some of these people now. 4 successes. Let's see here. Let me look at my notes. Alright, so you chat to some of the locals here at the Lower Red Lion, and it doesn't sound like much has been going on. There was a fair a few weeks ago, and that was one of the bigger events this town has, which was a moderate success. This town is not very large, it's growing slowly. They have little wooden walls. Actually, no, they wouldn't have wooden walls because that would have been used by defenses. They don't even have walls, really. It's very small. So there was a fair, a few weddings. This woman you're speaking to mentions a few other events going on. It all sounds very mundane to you. She says by far the biggest event was obviously the battle, which drew much fear and concern.
Alright, that's all she was going to ask about.
Okay. Since you got her talking, I'll give you a chance to kind of read her a little bit. Give me a perception, empathy, difficulty 8.
I don't notice anything.
No successes. Seems like a very mundane, fairly boring town. And she's doesn't seem very concerned about anything except for really the battle. Eventually you finish talking to her, get up, and make your way out of the tavern, where you find a vigilant Robert. And Robert, I'll have you make a perception, alertness, standard difficulty. You can lower that, since you said you're using Aspect, you can lower that to a minimum of 3.
Okay.
Alright, 2 successes. You feel like you have a very good idea of all the movement around you up and down the streets. Notice an owl flying by here and there, a rider once in a while. Nothing really out of the ordinary. You're very keen on the moment when Elined steps out, your head turning in that direction, and the two of you rejoin.
Have you noticed anything out of the ordinary?
No, I have not. Nothing that stands out. Something does feel wrong in the air, though.
That does. I just asked one of the locals inside, and nothing comes up as a potential cause for that outside of the battle, but this is not typical. I have been on a great many battlefields, and this has never occurred.
Is that so? Troubling. Perhaps we should not stay here any longer than necessary.
I had much the same sentiment.
The two of you make your way back to your quarters for the remainder of your stay.
Yep.
Okay. It's an uneventful trip back out of the town and back to the army encampment, where you find secure lodgings for the day inside your tents. And in time, the day sleep takes you. Following that night, the army quickly gets itself together, packing up supplies and armies, or I should say, battalions splitting off from the army start to disperse as the Duke of York brings his main contingent along with his prisoners south to London. And it seems like Ragna rides with him along with her retinue and child Jesper, Mr. Sharp, and Lydia, of course. You're provided a carriage if you don't already have one. I can't recall if you did or not.
No, we lost our carriage during the entire Inquisitor thing.
That's right. So Ragna sets you up with a few horses, carriage. So you're able to make your way where you please. Of course, Gertrude and Guy de Free are happy the battle is over. Guy de Free also did not participate in the battle. He seemed not at all eager to get involved. And Gertrude was seen after the battle tending to the wounded among the Yorkists. But they're pleased to be moving on from here as well. Where does Robert need to go?
We are back at York.
No, you're at St. Albans, and you have.
I thought our ghouls stayed behind.
Oh, they stayed behind?
That's what Elined had her ghoul do.
Oh, I missed that. Okay. Did Guy de Free come then?
Robert would have kept him close.
Okay. Then it's just Guy de Free, although you continue to notice that he has these bouts of catatonic stillness where he seems to just stare off. He seems not to have shaken that You wonder if you ever will. So it's just the three of you, though.
About what point did the uneasy atmosphere dissipate?
It doesn't.
Okay.
Once you become aware of it, it's hard not to notice.
Robert not having much more to do, he'll probably try to investigate the source of this.
All right.
He's quite curious now.
So, Elined, you see Robert doesn't mean to follow Ragna's retinue or return to York. What does Elined mean to do?
Elined will express to Robert that she wishes to go to York so she can retrieve her ghoul, because, well, she needs to return to her home briefly in order to fill her wallet a bit.
It is better we stick together. This sensation, such an oddity.
That it is. But it is more of a reason not to remain here. Besides, when we were getting on that ship to go to London, weren't you mentioning something about having to replenish your funds yourself?
Correct. Out of character, is this like a heavily wooded area around here?
St. Albans?
Yeah.
Let me look at the map. Not particularly, although to the west is a very dense forest, maybe 10 miles off. So in the area right around you, not very much. It's good farming land around here.
At the very least, Robert will try to look in the direction of the forest and see if he senses anything supernatural emanating from there.
Okay. And Elined leaving for York?
She'll wait for him to come along since they only have one carriage. She's not about to just strand Robert in a town of unease.
You were given multiple horses, so you could ride. It's just one carriage, but multiple horses, so if you really wanted to, you could split up.
She's not much for riding.
Fair. Okay. What was that?
Well, that was just if you were going to have an awareness roll, there it is.
We'll probably have you do something different. I would like us to check in Scotland, but I think it might be a little bit longer before we can get back to Tom. Are you okay waiting a little bit longer, Cormac?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Then I'm actually going to step away really quick. Gotta use the restroom, and then I'll be back, and we'll continue with Elined and Robert. So I'll be right back in like 2 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. So, Robert, you are investigating the forest to the west of St. Albans. And, Elined, are you going with him or just waiting for him to come back?
I'll go with him just to make sure he doesn't get himself killed.
Oh, I was more just thinking heading in that direction a bit and seeing if it grows stronger. Not actually traveling far into a wooded area.
Okay. Then I will let your perception awareness roll stand at 2 successes. You find when you've ridden more than a mile or 2 away from town, it seems to dissipate noticeably. This feeling.
And he'll write it off as not being what he held as a potential and continue on the trail.
Continue on the trail into the forest.
With the intent of heading to York.
Okay. So you return, and Elined, you likewise, I would say, you can tell the sensation starts to ease up the further you get from St. Albans. But it seems that Robert is content with finding it is apparently not related to the forest. And you set your belongings up into the carriage and prepare to move back north to York. Now at carriage speed, let's see, one sec. About 180 miles. So it will take you about 12 days in good condition to make it back north to York, which will put you into early June. And it is around this time that we will do downtime from here up through the rest of 1455, ending at January of next year. So you have half of a year once you've arrived in York. What are Robert's plans now that he's arrived?
Briefly, I'll probably check on Dorothy, see how she's doing. Depending on that, Ragnar pretty much said that she doesn't want him around. He may or may not press depending on how that interaction with her goes. If so, he'll actually head back to York and begin searching for his grandsire's hidden chamber.
In Lincoln?
Yes.
Right. You check in with Dorothy, and in private, of course, she relays to you that Randall Penborough, the Tremere in your conspiracy, has left York in search of answers about this Sienna the Virgin, the supposed spy master for Ragna, to find out more. She knows he left south towards one of the capital cities, but she's not sure which one or when he will return. Although it sounded like he estimated some number of months of being gone. She says that news of the victory of Ragna over the Lancasters has changed the narrative among the neonates in York. Many are more encouraged that her leadership means success, maybe even safety. They feel like they're on the winning side. Even if they're not fully endorsing of elders lording over them, they at least trust that they have the strongest one. I would say you don't really see much of Ragna over the next 6 months. You do see Jesper returns, mostly to act in her stead. He spends most of the time as a kind of interim seneschal, along with Mr. Sharp, who aids him.
This is 6 months, you say?
Yes. The remainder of 1455.
Oh, was there no way to go to Lincoln?
You can go down to Lincoln whenever you want.
Yeah, if he was told that Pembroke left, he'll probably just tell Dorothy to be careful. And begin heading towards Lincoln to see how things are there. He won't remain in York for too long.
Okay.
After verifying how long Elined is planning on staying.
Alright, that turns us to Elined. What are her plans now?
She intends to retrieve her ghoul and return to her home city. Well, her vampiric home city, not the mortal one.
Right. Alright. Gertrude is of course pleased to see you're alright, and continues to be concerned for the state of Guida Free, who continues to persist with these bouts, these episodes of stillness, quietness. It's very different. But her attention is first focused on you, and she seems to be doing well otherwise. And you mean to return quickly to Bristol?
Yes, that way she can replenish her funds since those were running low, and she keeps her wealth, or what little wealth she has in comparison to everyone else there.
Mm-hmm. Alright, so Robert, it sounds like Elined will be leaving probably within the month, at the most, after returning to York.
And he'll let her know he's heading over to Lincoln, and they should have plans to meet up elsewhere eventually. Perhaps back at York.
Better if they go to London first in order to get a gauge for how the other cities are taking this.
This makes sense. And London will be the next meetup spot.
Alright, do you set a date for planning on meeting together again in London?
Hmm. Perhaps, nearly a year?
Alright, so maybe like next summer?
Yeah, that sounds okay.
Alright, we can do that.
Okay. Save the date. Meeting in London at the beginning of summer 1457. Write that down. Okay. We will start with Robert. You return to Lincoln, your home, in the middle of summer 1450. What did I say? 457? I'm at 56. So you return to Lincoln in the middle of summer 1455. And not all is well. You find, when you return, you have a presentation and a meeting with the prince there. The new... Yes, Eden Everly. The new prince. And unfortunately, you see that by her side is... I'll make sure I get things right. Francois Lemasson, your ghoul, is working for her.
Naturally, Robert will inquire into the meaning of this.
It seems in your prolonged absence, Eden Everly managed to convince Francois to spend increasing amounts of time helping her manage her affairs instead of yours. And you can make a perception awareness roll, standard difficulty, during this meeting you have with her. And him at her side. Two successes. You're noticing a nature about him which seems unnaturally drawn to her. You know not exactly what she has done, but you know that something has transpired in your absence, and he is very devoted to her now. Unfortunately, your affairs and your finances, your many sources of income which required constant management, have succumbed to much disorder, leading to much reduced income. You will lose a resource dot now that you no longer have Francois Lemasson managing them. And no one's been managing them for months now.
Okay.
Of course, Eden Everly, Ever the Diplomat, is very apparently sincere in not meaning any harm, simply requiring more assistance to manage the city of Lincoln, which is, of course, a very demanding job. And she assumes that you understand that Francois is doing a great service for the prince and the city by helping her manage things. And she appreciates your understanding. What's Robert's reaction to this?
Well, he is going to mention that since Francois has been so helpful to her, that surely she would not mind if he had the ability to search for anything his grandsire may have left behind within the castle.
She inquires as to what you think might have been left behind.
Specifics he can't say, but he knew his sire well enough that he's certain he had something hidden away that would be useful.
She agrees out of respect to your grandsire to let you search the castle, and even invites to help you in looking at whatever this secret chamber might be, helping to find it, and offering some of her own resources.
Does she seem sincere about this proposal?
Perception, empathy, standard difficulty. You can see pretty clearly this is to keep tabs on whatever you might happen to find so that she also knows what you found. They probably will help. They probably will also tell her what you find.
He'll accept the offer, but he certainly isn't going to put them to use in places he thinks it will actually yield results.
Alright, you quickly find that it seems like at least one of these men is always in sight of you. Not so much that they go off in different directions, but there always seems to be one whom you're fairly certain is making sure they see what you're doing.
Time to charm that one up.
Alright, how do you want to charm them?
We'll start with... Entrancement.
Okay. So spending a blood point, roll your appearance empathy, difficulty 5. Two successes. So you'll get one of them for at least one of these days of looking. But
How many did you say there were again?
There's about half a dozen that are quote-unquote helping you.
We'll send them to, like, dig behind the guest house.
Okay. So on one of these nights at least, you have a night of unsupervised searching. Although you expect it's going to take you more than one night, unless you have a very successful night tonight. Let me look at your character here.
That's what we'll shoot for. I believe he already has one success searching the tower.
Okay. Do you recall what you were rolling before?
Alas, I do not.
Okay. It's probably going to be perception investigation. I will have you, since you're not being supervised, you have a night. I'll have you roll it at standard difficulty. I'm looking for 10 successes total.
Each roll will be one night.
Yes.
Is there a way to search this out in a logical manner? Or will it simply be like searching the tower physically?
It's going to be a lot of just boots on the ground, just looking. You're not really sure what you're looking for either, which makes it more difficult.
Fair enough. You said standard difficulty?
Yes. Alright, so now a total of 4 successes. You make some progress in searching the Tower of Lincoln. And as before, you manage to clear up a few spots where you're quite certain there's nothing, there cannot be anything here out of place. The next night you go to search, continue your efforts, you find that there's a new face who seems always to conveniently be in your line of sight. They seem to rotate. So you can keep searching under supervision, or you can try something else.
Yeah, I'll search under supervision for a night.
Okay. And roll again. Any specialties?
In this field, no.
Okay. That's a total of 8 successes. You think you've managed to localize wherever this hidden chamber is. You think you have it pinned somewhere at this sub-level in the tower. You feel like you're getting close. And are you spending blood each night? To rise, I mean?
To rise? Sure. Of course, if these workers are mortal, which are ghouls, he'll take a bit from off the top from them.
Are you gonna try and feed from them?
Yep.
Are you trying to carouse them into letting you, or just going for it?
I mean, if they're keeping one that's just keeping eyes on him, you're just going to lure that one in and not drain them to the point of knocking them out, but just to already get them under his influence and just take a point of blood.
Are you trying to trance them?
Not in trance at this point.
But lure them in.
Yeah, lure them in. Perhaps keep them close by as he's searching, and he gets a chance. He'll just As I'm saying this, is like it's not sounding very useful.
it could go poorly.
Yeah. Dang it all! I'm just annoyed at this point. He'll take a break to go hunting. Why not? He'll go to a tavern, and he'll just carouse with the locals.
Alright, you're gonna carouse some locals to feed on instead?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead and charisma expression. Give you standard difficulty. You're able to feed as you need. Get 3 people over the night. You can resume your searching.
Okay. Once again, going back to the search. It's probably mapped out most of the tower now. Have they started searches in the lower level yet?
Yes, because they mostly follow you.
For that one day? Okay.
Every day you have people following you.
At the very least, one day he had no followers.
Yes, that is correct. One of those days you did not.
So he'll just double back to that area and start searching under the presence of these guys. Making a good show of it, that he's genuinely looking in this area.
Alright, so you're gonna burn a night just pretending to be looking at something.
Yep, why not?
Okay. Because you're pretty sure that wherever this chamber is, it's probably in one of the sub-levels, and you've gone back up.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Manipulation performance, standard difficulty. 3 successes. Yeah, you put on a good show. You look really curious and intrigued, even tense, looking around these places you think you're making progress on, and the others take note and they seem to gravitate around you. And a night is spent doing almost nothing, making no forward progress. The next night comes.
The next night here, he will How many are keeping eyes on him now? Is it just one, or their rotations actually doubled the presence?
It's tough to say. You think in total there's maybe half a dozen. Usually you see one that's pretty close, kind of going up and down the hallways, noticing you, or maybe someone down the hallway looking at you or seeing what you're doing. Sometimes two. They seem to be somewhat mobile and... what's the word? Not nebulous, but transient.
I try to lose them, honestly. He'll head to the tavern again.
Alright, you want to lose them. Okay. I will take a... Wits Stealth. Difficulty 6. It's going to be contested. You don't think you're gonna lose him tonight, at least. You think you do, and then you, out of the corner of your eye, you spot one.
Is there any spot other than the lower level he has not checked in the castle? He's just looking to burn time. He wants to be as boring as possible at this point.
Yeah, you can burn some time and look in other places that you're fairly certain are pointless. You burn the night again, playing this game of cat and also cat.
The next night, he will attempt to lose them again.
Alright, go ahead and roll it again. Alright, one success. I'm actually going to have you roll something else. You think you're making progress on losing them. You learn their movements a little bit better now. But make a perception alertness roll. Standard difficulty. Alright, got any specialties there?
Nope.
Okay, 3 successes. Finally, you're convinced you have some time. Maybe not long, but you think you have enough time, and you've given them enough of a good show upstairs that maybe they'll go up there, and you think you could maybe finish this.
And he will definitely shoot for that in the lower levels.
Alright, go ahead and make your roll to search again. Alright, that nets you 11 successes. So finally, after maybe a week of learning how to outmaneuver these agents of Eden Everly, you feel like you finally have enough progress that you're able to move back into the castle, down to the lower levels, and you do uncover a chamber which you were not aware was ever there before. And at the sight of Robert's eyes going wide at his revelation, we will fade the scene and switch to Elined.
Yes, I am still here.
Good. Meanwhile, Elined, you've returned to Bristol. Back to the manor of your sire, who informs you... Give me one moment. You meet back with your sire in the summer of 1455, and he informs you that a fairly significant chest of silver has arrived, and he was instructed by knights bearing the White Rose of York that this was for you. Regards sent from Prince Ragnar of York. It's quite a hefty sized chest of what you find is mostly silver. You can increase your resources by 1 with the amount of liquidity that has been bestowed upon you. Your sire seems very impressed, if not slightly alarmed, that this much wealth has been transferred all at once to you. Of course, news has reached even to Bristol of the victory that Ragnar had, which obviously she attributes to you. He seems to think that it's a bit much, a bit excessive. He cautions you about such a gift. What is Elined's reaction to this great gift of wealth?
She is taken aback by this. The most she's gotten in the past from going on expeditions is getting some portion of the loot, and she knows this is not what that usually is. This much more seems like Ragnar wishes to keep Elined on her side.
Your sire is inclined to agree with you. All the more reason to be careful about her. When you return, of course, Prince Kincaid welcomes you back, not exactly with open arms, but to the extent that a man of stoicism and calmness does show joy. He seems pleased to have the Marshal of the Covenant forces returned, perhaps adding to the esteem of his own city in Princeton. Gertrude is happy to be back. You can tell that while she's certainly happy to serve you, if left to her own devices, you think she might be very happy settling down somewhere that she knew and was comfortable in. What are Elined's plans now that she's back in Bristol? And again, you have maybe 5 months left at this time.
Oh, well, first things first, she's going to inquire as to if the prince has heard news of the small band of inquisitors that have made themselves home on the island.
Kincaid says he does have knowledge of this. He seems fairly concerned by their presence and fairly concerned at Octavia's lack of concern, given how dangerous inquisitors are in this day and age. And stories from the continent of many fires burning out many Cainites, neonate and elder alike. He queries you about your interactions with Octavia, what you think of her, and
Her polite smile goes down to a frown at remembering the invasion of the mind that happened with Octavia. She expresses that she is in no way, shape, or form a fan of her.
do you tell Kincaid about the event of your mind being seen, even violated?
Yes.
He does not seem very surprised at this revelation. Perhaps he already suspected such power was within her. And he uses it as a punctuation of his concern and his caution around Octavia, suggesting this is further evidence that even if she is a Covenant prince, and they seek the stability of England, Octavia is something of a wild card. Her clan always has been, and there's no telling exactly where she lies in this. The Cassandras cannot be trusted, and Octavia least of all.
She will express that though the Inquisitors being here is concerning, they only seem to be interested in the city of which they reside, in Lincoln and in York. Those are the only three they had any real interest in, and it's mostly in the city they reside.
Canterbury.
Yes.
Okay. All the same, Kincaid does seem very vexed by this. He doesn't often express much emotion, except for that outburst that you were witness to. Although this is more of a steady level of maybe mild anxiety.
And that they seem to have a velvet merchant under their protection. Anyone who seems to inquire as to the velvet merchant seems to be the next target for these Inquisitors.
He says something to you to the effect of wishing to investigate this further, but given that this is under the sovereignty of Octavia's city, he can't raise a finger to do anything right now, and also thinks it is perhaps unwise to draw more attention right now with further investigation if they're coming after anyone who looks into it. But he tells you that he is going to... He's very vague about telling you he's going to look into ways to solve this problem tactfully. And he appreciates being kept informed of what's happening in Canterbury. Is there anything else Elined wanted to do while she was in Bristol during this time?
Let's see. Is Tybalt still entertaining the same place he usually does? The same church he preaches to?
Yes, he seems reclusive as always. Going to his chapel, you find that he is still preaching there to his small but dedicated flock. You're received with warm regard by him. He does not speak of Hezekiah.
Of course.
But yes, it seems that Father Tybalt is still in Bristol, still holding service.
She will say that her and Cormac have made progress with what they were tasked to research. Though she will keep details on that vague because they know not who might be listening in.
He seems to nod very slowly and vaguely. He either doesn't know what you're talking about, or he's being equally discreet.
She will assume he's being equally discreet.
You don't get much feedback from him otherwise on that topic.
That they have a location down. It's more of a matter of the two of, well, Cormac and her meeting up again, is all.
He wishes you all the best and safe journeys going forward. To have the utmost caution these nights.
Alright. She will wish him the same, and her third matter of business is to... Since she has rather plain-looking clothes and can easily draw her cloak around herself, she's lived in this city for quite a long time. Does she know of the general hangouts for the neonate?
I would say yes, simply because you've lived here so long, it would be hard not to know. And Elined has kind of existed as this fly in the wall for so long that you take note of some such things. So I will say that yes, you do know generally where the neonates can be found on most nights.
Alright.
Otherwise can figure out where they would be.
She will make use of her rather plain appearance and attire, and do her best to hide her ring and mingle among these neonates, see what they think of the current happenings with the news of the battle.
Well, Alright, so you take your ring off for this?
For this, yes.
Okay. And inquiring into the minds of the neonates on the outcome of the Battle of St. Albans.
Not only that, their thoughts on, well, whatever they feel free to share. But yes, the ripples from that battle would be something she would be inquiring about.
Alright, give me a manipulation empathy. Difficulty is 6. Alright, and pick highs or lows.
Let's go highs.
Lows. Alright. You start to make promising progress on speaking to the neonates, but a couple of them realize that they recognize your face. You're Elined. Elined Versinghan, the one that was appointed to the Gauntlet. And after that, it becomes a lot harder, ring O, to hide who you are. You recognize in this town, people know who you are, even without the ring. And you get responses from the neonates of general support for whatever you do. The price of fame.
That it is.
Safe to say you don't get much of an honest answer about anything at that point. People are trying to kiss up to you or otherwise flatter. Anything else in particular that Elined wishes to do during this time, the remainder of 1455?
Question. Before the other two members of the coterie went up north to Scotland, did they say they would return to London or not? Because I don't think they said anything on the matter, but...
I don't recall if anything was said one way or another. However, if you're looking to reconnect, it might be a good segue into what's happening in Scotland, so we can give Cormac and Thomas a chance to interact with the remainder of the year, and you might end up crossing paths.
Okay, yeah, she ended up to meet up with Cormac at some point and try to do that, go to that burial mat.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I think that's a good segue. And 6:40, we'll take an early break here, 15 minutes, and when we come back, we will return to Scotland and see how things fare up north. Sound good?
Delicious.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, excellent.
Maybe we'll come back in 15. So elsewhere, in early May of 1455, Thomas and Cormac are following Clyde and Malcolm MacDougall through the Scottish Highlands, the countryside, riding north through the hills and the lochs back to Edinburgh. You've really had no time to rest at all, moving from homestead to homestead, feeding on the farmers and the livestock where possible. The closer you get, the fewer farms you see as the land seems less and less arable at a glance, reminding you much of Yorkshire, where the farming is mostly pastoral. But even here you can tell Scotland is far less populated than England. Finally, you do return to the familiar streets of Edinburgh and get situated once more. The night of return is mostly spent unwinding, washing, feeding, and sleeping the day away. Cormac, Gautier is quick to tend to you, worried that you might be as badly wounded as Thomas or Malcolm appears. He seems almost hysterical that you were in such grave threat.
Cormac shows Gautier that he is, in fact, unharmed.
This relieves him immensely. You can tell already the vitae in him, especially of your lineage, has heightened his sense of emotion a bit. The following night, you're both beckoned back into the great hall of the palace to speak with Malcolm again. And on the way in, you pass by Anselmus, who's leaving on the way out, and he bows to each of you in turn. When you arrive, you see Malcolm is sitting awkwardly in his seat, the wound is still visible, although he's now wearing a heavy fur cloak over his shoulders, better to hide it. Clyde standing off to the side by the wall with his arms crossed. Malcolm gestures out painfully. "Have a seat, lads."
Tom doesn't rest on ceremony. He comes forward and has a seat.
Cormac as well, his face serious.
Now, I'll be first to say, nothing's changed about my opinion of the English. However, I won't have it said that I don't repay my debts. And you are owed something for that scrap with those wild things. Now, what will it be? He says, looking to Tom.
Tom takes a measured moment. Well, if Anselmus hadn't seen us come in, I'd have had you send word to London of my death.
Cormac's head snaps in Tom's direction.
There are ways of making it appear that way. What's to say you don't go on out into some kind of trouble tomorrow night? What Anselmus doesn't see, he can't report.
Tom will look back in Cormac's direction for a response. I'm very tired, you see, of the hiding.
This is Thomas's show. Cormac says nothing.
Even so, still trying to gauge a response from companion.
If nothing else, he'll nod approvingly, although his expression remains serious.
Truth be told, I've been looking for the opportunity for some time.
And what exactly are you hiding from, lad?
It's a very long story. With a very simple answer. You see, my father was a merchant, with no male heirs.
He looks at you curiously.
Cormac tenses a bit.
And the only way to keep things in the family was to create a son.
He tilts his head, still looking skeptical.
Did you know with the right paperwork in London, you can create a whole person from fresh cloth?
Speak plainly, Englishman.
This cannot leave this room, for the ruse would be up at that point.
He rests his forearm on the table between you and looks between himself and Clyde, and then looks back to you and nods.
And Tom will scrape away the beard. The man is dead. Thomas Chamberlain fell in that battle. Or wherever you choose to tell Ambrose. And Tom will lay the beard on the table.
He looks at it with widened eyes and looking back to you. What? Are you saying you're a lass?
A bit too old to be a lass, but if you like.
He again exchanges glances with Clyde. Now that's a story I haven't heard.
Be happy to share it with you.
Well, as you wish. Thomas Chamberlain joined Clan MacDougall, battling the lupine menace of the Highlands. We all saw him fall. Kind of looks around between Cormac and Clyde. That is what Ambrose would hear.
Cormac's tension fades and he slumps back in his chair a bit.
You did right by Clan MacDougall, so Clan MacDougall will do right by you. Ambrose might blame Scotland for the loss of their esteemed lord, but I doubt, with what they have down there, that he's gonna march his arse up here. And if he does, so be it. He kinda sits back in his chair, wincing a bit at the pain. What then shall I be calling the English in front of me?
Judith. I've been using the name Stone.
He nods. And your faction, the one Ellen told us of, are they aware?
She is, at least. How far beyond her it goes, I'm not privy to. But she is.
Then you can still negotiate. On her behalf.
That was my thinking, yes.
If nothing else, you've proven you can be treated with. Says looking between you and Cormac. So let us get down to it before we set off. What would you have Scotland do for this group of yours?
We were sent to procure the aid of your border reavers.
There are kin from Clan MacDougall among the reavers. We have some sway there. He looks over his shoulder back to Clyde briefly. And what would these reavers be doing?
Sacking Carlisle.
He doesn't flinch when you say that.
Judith didn't expect him to.
When?
We haven't been given a timetable, though I would expect in the summer.
This summer or next?
Ideally this summer, but again, we weren't provided those details.
There would not be much time. The summer is almost upon us. finding the reavers and bringing them south beyond Hendrians. Be very tight. But it is possible. There was mention of tribute.
Aye. A shipment of iron, wool, wax. A few other odds and ends.
He nods a couple times. I'll settle on your word for it, lass.
It does take a bit of getting used to. I understand.
Clan MacDougall and the Reavers will arrive where we are rallied before Carlisle. You can return with that message.
We will see that it gets to where it's meant to go.
And he reaches out his forearm.
And Judith will reach out and clasp it in return.
Good.
One last, if I may, small request.
He waits.
Do me the honor of letting me call you brother.
He looks at you curiously. You are neither a Scot or a MacDougall. You'll have to settle for a friend.
Judith will grin a bit.
That's
A fine
no
compromise.
English woman.
A fine compromise. I'm well pleased.
And if it gets out of this room that I'm friends with an English woman, I promise to kill everyone in this room. He kind of looks around, his eyes wide.
Cormac laughs almost explosively before reining it back in.
Judith just grins. You do have a reputation to uphold, after all.
Aye. So be it. Judith Stone. And by the by, if you do find this Campbell you've been trying to reach, we do a great favour. Clan MacDougall will do a great favour for having her brought. One way or another.
Campbell's fled to the south of Scotland, yes?
South and beyond. In fact, I have reason to believe it's a woman hiding in the city you call Chester. can't say that'll be right by time anyone checks, but there it is.
Well, then at least for everyone's sensibilities, it's a good thing I'll be on her trail.
We did make a promise, after all.
He nods and slowly hoists himself up in obvious agony. You have domain here. That is, you may use my domain to feed, hunt, stay, as you please until you're ready to leave. He looks briefly at your wound, Tom.
It will be some time, but it will give time for the message to reach London.
He nods, clutching at his chest, where you can still see a major gash.
Tom still has, or well, Judith still has one floppy sleeve that's not filled.
I have to say it's been an interesting event. Learning you Southerners. He cracks a very faint grin, although it's more of a wince, as he turns and begins walking off. Clyde gives a respectful nod to each of you and follows after.
Well, it's done then. For better or worse.
I have to say I feel a bit better for it, though. Though I am sorry to pile so much upon your shoulders.
Pish posh. I can take anything you throw at me.
I meant more because you'll be the Gauntlet Lord with access.
Well, we still don't know how much they know down south. I might not have access for long. Which brings me to the other problem I've been mulling. What happens in England once this comes about is going to be terrible. There will be refugees. We must find them a safe place to flee until new order can be established.
The Isle of Man will support some. I'm sure, following Carlisle, we can speak again with McDougal's. Though I don't know how many Scotland can support.
Perhaps we can drum up some support in Ireland as well.
If we can unseat Barbaros, that will be a damn sight easier.
I don't see how we're going to accomplish that.
I think we'll let the Yorkists handle most of that.
You don't think Ragna's just battering at a brick wall?
She'll certainly draw him out anyway.
He is impulsive, it's true. But there is that Chancellor of his. The false Tremere. We don't know where he stands in all of this.
We know that he's an obstacle. Perhaps Wales.
You really want to take the wind out of Elined's sails, you'll tell her that.
Out of character, I can't remember this. Is Wales under the Covenant as well, or?
Yes. Yes, it is. And you can roll an intelligence politics, standard difficulty, for what you might know about Wales.
I'm going to do that as well.
Yeah, go for it. Just let me look over my notes briefly. Alright. And 0 successes Tom, 3 successes Cormac. Alright, so Tom, you don't know any particulars about Welsh history. You're fairly confident that they fall under the domain of the Covenant on some level. Cormac, you're certain of that, and you recall, actually, that at the turn of the century, around 1400 through about 1415, there was a rebellion in Wales that had to be put down, led by Owen Glyndwr, the Prince of Wales. And this was brutally put down by Covenant forces. And Elined aided in this.
Aided in putting it down against the Welsh?
Yes.
Oh. I think Wales is definitely right out. Or have you forgotten what Elined told us about her role in the Welsh Rebellion?
It wasn't long enough ago for them to have forgotten. They may be sympathetic.
But they won't want to risk the ire of the Covenant again. Not so soon.
Cormac, you, with all of your successes, you know that Wales is a graveyard, both among the Kine and the Cainites. If there are even any Cainites left, their economy was crushed by war, the lands ravaged, it's hard enough for even the smallest collection of Welsh to survive. You don't think any Canaanites survived. And there's certainly not enough people there for Canaanites to subsist off of. Wales is a no man's land now. A wasteland.
It was while thinking about this that he told Thomas that it was out, so he won't go into too much detail. Unless pressed. I think Ireland and Scotland are our best bets. Or perhaps points further east.
France, the Norselands. France will certainly have the countryside and the cities to support a few refugees. Whether or not they'll want to come back is another question.
And if they don't, we'll rebuild without them. But at least they won't be embroiled in a war they didn't ask for. There's something else since you're here. Something that's been niggling at me. I'd like to put it into words, even if nothing comes of it.
Judith looks immensely curious and leans in, chin on one hand.
It seems we're going to keep moving from danger to danger. Neither of us can be certain how long we're going to live. Therefore, I think it would behoove me, if you think the time is right, for me to take a child.
I didn't know you had such aspiration.
My sire, Hugh de Balsham, he embraced a scholar. And you see now what's become of me. I'm more soldier than scholar now. But Gautier, he could be everything that my sire wanted and more, to carry on my legacy, should it come to the worst.
You'll need to seek permission.
That is another part of what's bothering me. I'm going to ask MacDougall if he can asylum here.
I don't know that he'll be adverse to it, though Gautier may chafe a bit.
MacDougall hates the English, it's a risk. But if I don't do it now, I might not get the chance. There is, of course, the option of seeking asylum for him in Dublin. But if it gets out whose child he is...
I think Dublin might be the better bet. Though, are you sure it's wise to sire a child immediately before a conflict of this level?
Of course I'm not sure it's wise, that's why I'm talking to you about it. It sounds like a downright stupid idea. but it's been bothering me nonetheless. I don't want to die having left nothing behind. I've lived too long to be an earmark in the history books.
Then all that's left is to ask. The worst he can say is no.
I didn't expect you to actually side with me on this. I'm sorry to say it, but you're making it a little too easy.
You have a notion in mind. You have a strong argument in favor of it. You need only convince yourself that it's the right argument. And you believe that by convincing me, you might talk yourself out of it. Is that about right?
Damn your arrogant logic.
But I'm not wrong, am I?
No, you're not wrong. I was praying you'd talk me out of it.
The facts are these. From this point forward, our time will be a precious commodity. Nights will be harried, much as they have been in the last fortnight. If you leave a child here, McDougal, it may be well cared for, and certainly will learn a lot about northern living. But is that a place for a scholar? I don't know.
No, I'm in agreement with you on that. It's not the best idea. Dublin is a better idea. But if the war spills over in that direction, you might be caught up in it nonetheless.
And at least in Dublin, any child you leave there won't be outright killed simply because it's a Londoner.
Especially if they know he's mine. I still have some respect there. Fine, he says, hammering his fist on the table. I'll seek his permission within the week. We're at a point now where I have some time to teach him our ways before we have to part. I was hoping you might help me with that too. I don't want to put the wrong ideas into his head.
And you imagine I have the right ones. You flatter.
You're more level-headed than I am.
I don't know if that's the best yardstick to use.
It's all I've got.
Judith will chuckle a bit.
Are you intending to wait until that's fully healed, and he'll nod to the empty sleeve, before we press on to tell Ellen of our findings?
I was hoping to. Besides which, whether we return to London to send word via that ghoul, whose name escapes me. Or if we return to her directly, a telltale scar will be a dead giveaway that Thomas isn't quite dead.
I see your logic in that as well, and I agree. Right now, we're in the calm at the center of the hurricane.
Another fortnight. Maybe less, maybe more. Time enough to gather our wits, regain strength, replace limbs. Would you rather return to London or somewhere else?
I hadn't thought about it, to be honest, and he looks stricken. You won't think me less of a man if I tell you I'm frightened to go back.
We can return to the inn that I own. Whatever hunter might be looking for us won't be looking there.
But then let's at least get our plan set in motion. There'll be travel to arrange. Are there considerations?
We'll have a great deal more challenge traveling together if Thomas is dead.
No doubt. I do think you're wrong about one thing. Ellen will want to move as quickly as this summer. She seems rather pragmatic.
You're probably right, but I'd rather prepare for an earlier assault than linger on and do nothing. If she needs to make different arrangements, she can send word herself once negotiations have been concluded, as they have been. A different envoy can finalize those details. But if things have been set in motion, all the better.
And we must also reconsider how we're going to connect with our other friends in the Gauntlet. They'll be wondering by now what's happened to us.
I hope they don't grieve me for too long.
Well, Elined won't. She's in on the secret, remember?
True enough, but she won't necessarily know until she sees me that it's a foreign.
True enough. What are we waiting for anyway? I'm hungry, I have maidens to harass.
That can wait until after you've eaten.
He chuckles at that.
And I need to go change. Though I think I'll probably keep the trousers.
I'd imagine it's not much fun running around in skirts.
You'd be surprised. The Scots do just fine with their tartan and kilt.
He shakes his head rather, a bit bewildered by the thought. But he stands and makes ready to leave.
And Judith will also rise and head towards her chambers to affect a more feminine mode of dress.
All right. So you return to your chambers, and trying to recall aggravated healing times. What is it like? Rest. You spend several blood points and rest for a week or something.
Well, it's 1 damage level per day costs 5 blood point to heal, but you can only heal 1 damage per.
All right. So the main rate limiting step here is really access to blood, but with the help of having free run of the domain for hunting, and maybe a little bit of help from Cormac, we'll say that you're able to get access to blood as needed. And over the next about fortnight, you are able to heal up this most grievous wound through a great amount of hunting. And then, where are you going from there, Judith?
To London.
Okay. So Judith setting off to London, and Cormac?
Does she make it known as that's where she's headed?
Well, that was what we had discussed.
Well, yes, but he has other things he needs to do first, as you know.
Oh, well, that's true. But that was a fortnight from that.
He's going to want to go to Dublin first. Well, that is going to depend on what McDougal says about him siring in his domain.
Make a charisma expression roll, difficulty 8.
Difficulty what?
8.
8, okay.
Wow, 4 successes. He seems reluctant at first, but seems to warm up to you and the idea. And he says, you can sire in his domain in exchange for a moderate boon. And it is only because you've built such good rapport that he's letting an Irishman sire here in Scotland.
And an Englishman, no less.
Yeah. Do you tell him that it's going to be an Englishman?
He'll keep that little bit to himself.
Okay, that goes
They're
a
not
long
going to stay
way
around long.
towards letting this happen.
He has trust that the prince will never directly talk to Gautier, other than the introductions, at which time it's too late.
So that is the offer he makes.
Cormac had a feeling that it wasn't going to be easy, and that's why he's been agonizing it for so long. But he's decided to stay the course, so he will grant that moderate boon.
Let me make a note of that.
He is, after all, pretty sure that his lifespan isn't much longer. He's been wrong before, though.
Okay. You're given leave to sire. What do you tell Gautier, or do you tell him anything?
He's not going to make the same mistake his own sire made and just take him. He will ask Gautier if he's ready, or if it's something he even wants.
Gautier is unsure. He seems excited at first, but then scared. He knows you can't come out during the day, and he begins to wonder if he'll miss that. And he thinks that he'll maybe enjoy life more as being like you, but then he begins to recall that you're different in some ways. You don't seem to eat food, and he wonders about that. And he kind of bemoans and deliberates the issue analytically for a very long time. Ultimately, he's not sure. He can't give you a straight answer. He just keeps debating it in his head. He's not certain one way or another. He's definitely interested in the idea.
Cormac is not going to try to force him, but he will try to assuage his fears about his ability to continue research, about how food doesn't matter so much, and the daylight's just another time of day, and more interesting things happen at night.
You got a charisma empathy roll, difficulty 8.
That is actually a botch.
It's actually a botch. Well, it seems that your attempts at minimizing his fears unfortunately inflame them, and by the end of your talk, he seems much more concerned and skeptical of the idea. He hasn't outright said no, but he's far more alarmed at the prospect of never seeing the sun, never having children, or a family of his own.
He will leave it at that. He said he'll give him some time to think about it. And that if he chooses not to, then, it would shorten their timeline for going to London, that's for certain.
The longer you give him, the more he seems certain he does not want to. Whether Cormac wishes to respect that is different.
For now, he will, although his patience may not last forever.
Alright. So with that, perhaps settled, perhaps not, what next will Cormac plan on?
With it resolved that he's not going to take a child now, he will notify MacDougall of his decision to belay that.
He says the offer stands. You won't demand a boon of it until you've made use of the offer.
And Cormac will thank him for that and tell him that his next move is to go with Judith to London.
Okay. And by this point, it's mid to late May when you depart south for London. By the time you arrive in London, by around the beginning of June, you arrive in time for news to have well spread the Battle of St. Albans. You hear different reports based between the Kine and the Cainites, but ultimately you get the picture that Covenant forces, specifically Elined, leading Ragnar's forces, have defeated Lancasters, that the king was taken prisoner, and the Duke of York is Lord Protector once again, putting Ragnar in a position of great power again. What will you do now that you've returned to London?
Well, Cormac, for his part, is a bit conflicted about this news, and he'll seek Judith's opinion on it. But he's also keeping his feelers out for any hint that someone might be looking for him. In a negative sort of way.
I can't say I'm terribly surprised. She went to York. She's been speaking in support of Ragnar for some time. Ragnar was bound to make a move to reinstall her favorite ghoul in the courts. Makes sense.
Yet it only cements my fear that Elined can't be trusted.
We don't know exactly what game she's playing yet, without asking her directly, of course. It could be...
But...
Just gonna say, it could be... she's using this as a distraction.
That's the problem with her. She's always 3 bloody steps ahead.
We'll simply have to make sure that we ask her more direct questions and pay close attention.
Assuming we can find her and she's not at Ragnar's left hand.
Word of Thomas's demise will not have reached her yet. She may still come seeking us at the manor.
And that is where I suggest we wait. Until we get news from the north. Have you sent a message to our friends?
We've only just arrived. I was hoping to seek out Mr. Lefoy present.
Yes, of course. Cormac looks harried, almost paranoid. He definitely does not like being back on English soil.
Yeah, make a perception alertness roll, Cormac. Standard difficulty. Three successes. You feel fairly confident looking up and down the streets, making sure you're double checking the corners, looking for anybody paying too much attention. Right now you feel confident that if there is someone tracking you, you either lost them or at least have some time before they catch up to you, or otherwise you can't see them.
Cormac doesn't let on that he's discovered this yet, but he will say to Judith, the quicker we get to the manor, the better. I'll tell you why there.
I'll join you there shortly. I'll need to take a back way in. I would much rather not be seen entering now that its previous resident has fallen.
You're going to leave me alone out here?
You know the way in. Kasim will let you through.
Damn your eyes, Judith. But all the same, he'll start leading his force in that direction.
Alright, you ride off down the street in the direction of the Chamberlain Manor, leaving Judith in the streets. And Judith, you mean to make a discreet entrance, or you seek out Tom of War?
I think Judith is going to go seek out Tom Lafoy to send word along, and then go back to the manor.
Okay.
In a discreet manner.
Poking around Elysium, you end up finding Tom Lafoy, and as per usual, he is cryptic and strange in his wording, occasionally even immature and childlike, but seems very pleased to see you. What do you speak to him about?
Judith would be fairly simple in her wording, and just, I wonder if you wouldn't pass a word along to our friends. The bargain has been struck.
In so many words, Tom agrees to this and grins during much of the conversation you have with him.
She would also inquire if he's had cause to make more acquaintances amongst the very young of late.
Very surreptitiously, he tells you here and there the young find their ways into dark corners, speaking to people they shouldn't.
So long as the guidance is good, and they find their way forward, then it's all for the best, don't you think?
He laments, almost sarcastically, the loss of Thomas Chamberlain, and that the news has spread, of course, throughout the Canaanite world of the loss of a Gauntlet Lord, the shakeup that's had. He also warns you that from birds afar he hears stories that Prince Barbaros, doubly enraged at the loss of his ship and the loss of this battle, has turned his ire towards Dublin.
Judith looks most unpleased by that. Haven't they suffered enough at his hands?
From what he hears, Barbaros lays blame the loss of the Von Danzig squarely at the feet of Prince Edward de Warenne. It's unclear what he means to do about this, though.
Seems we might be making a trip to Dublin after all. Judith would inquire one last time, though. Has anyone made any overtures towards the Chamberlain holdings?
Not yet that he knows of, but he suspects Genevieve would know more.
It's always a pleasure, Tom. Don't hesitate to come seek me if you have news from our friends.
He parts a farewell very enigmatically before he disappears again.
And then Judith would go set about making a very surreptitious entrance into the back ways of the Chamberlain Manor.
Alright. Give me a wit stealth standard difficulty. Alright. You return back to the manor. And Cormac, this is a couple hours later when you hear news of someone returning, and Kazim personally brings Judith up to greet you and seems very hushed about it.
Would Kasim have told me about any visits from the lawyer about transfer of the estate?
Of the Chamberlain estate?
Indeed.
Into Judith's hands?
Precisely.
Leave. I'm gonna have to look at my notes again, but maybe you can refresh my mind.
Basically, there was a will written up at the end of the year. No, excuse me, about a year ago, where Judith Chamberlain,
Ralph
where
Gunsberg,
she is so
right?
named. Yep, Ralph Gunsberg, the lawyer. Judith was named as the sole inheritor of Albert Chamberlain, her godfather.
That's right. Yes. It does sound like, from Kazim's reporting to you, that there have been some solicitors, some soft men, he describes, coming with papers and very confusing words about the inheritance of the estate, the movement of holdings, and he's been agreeing to... He's basically been postponing, like, buying time until you could get back to handle them.
That's a thing that we'll need to get dealt with. Not this current evening, but we can blue book that if you need.
Sure. We are going to come up to... We are kind of doing some blue booking right now, as both you and Cormac will have the remainder of 1455 to decide what you wish to do during this time. And so, as I said, the two of you have returned back to the manor and can continue on as you please.
Once rejoined, Judith would share some of the details from her meeting with Tom. To apologize for keeping you waiting, but I wanted to make sure that message got off rapidly.
And she tells him about Barbarossa's plans for Dublin.
Yeah, a little bit more flowery language, but yeah.
Well, that enrages him. And of course, he wants to go immediately.
I thought you might. But think on this. What might you do?
That he does not have an answer to. And his whole powerlessness in the situation makes him even mad. To the point where it looks like he might fly off the handle if they continue this conversation.
Maybe roll self-control right now. Difficulty 7. That's including your flaw.
Alright.
3 successes. Yeah, you think you could break the desk in front of you that you're talking about, but you gain control quickly.
In the end, he admits that there's really nothing he can do other than send a message to Dublin warning.
I expect they already know. If Laflois was aware, it means that action has already been taken. Though, does mean ripe recruitment ground.
I'm sorry, I just got a string of text messages. What was the last thing you said?
It does mean ripe recruitment ground. Barbaros won't be making any friends after all.
That much is true, but what if he does something irredeemable? He's impulsive enough to send forces that had best be kept elsewhere, just to deal with his rage.
For your sake, I hope your friend doesn't end up a martyr.
It's precisely what I'm worried about. Right, then what would you suggest we do?
For the moment, there's not much to be done. We can wait for Elined to return, seeking us out. We can see about finding whomever it is you feel is stalking you.
I can't hide in here like a hermit. I will make my presence known in London, and be damned anyone who tries to follow me. So, that said, Cormac is willing to wait to see how things play out, to see if they get messages back. And he will spend the rest of his time further grooming Gautier in the hopes that he'll come around.
And Thomas?
Judith.
Oh, Judith?
What kind of time frame are we talking about?
It is now summer 1455. I just want to know, in the next couple of seasons, what do you expect to happen or begin? We'll say that right now the process of the inheritance of the Chamberlain estate into Judith is ongoing.
Yeah, that would be priority number A1. Let's see. Obviously want to deal with the transfer of command of the men. Because regardless of everything else, that's human power. Doesn't really translate on paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll say that by the end of summer, the last of the legal hiccups has been overcome thanks to the work of your lawyer, Ralph Gunsberg. And by that time, by the beginning of fall, Judith is in possession of Thomas's resources.
Which means, of course, if nothing else, Genevieve is aware of the situation.
Yes, she is aware and concerned that the mass change of hands of resources will look suspicious.
To minimize that, would it be possible? I don't know if this is a thing. Would it be possible to create, since the Chamberlain house was incorporated, and it was no longer just simply a family affair anymore? Trying to think if we could do some kind of holding company wherein Judith was simply the head in control, not necessarily the matriarch of a merchant family.
That's one of Genevieve's chief concerns, is that Chamberlain males that were previously disposed of and convinced to work distant trading posts and otherwise handled will look at this as an opportunity or an affront. That some unknown woman took over their rightful heritage and business. She warns you to expect legal trouble.
Yeah, that was already expected. That's a thing I was expecting.
You could put a pin in that for now. It's not as immediate.
Yeah. Right.
Other than that, what else do you think Judith has on her plate?
Judith would continue to interact with the neonates of London. Probably become a little bit more a fixture in Elysium as a result, but that's needs must.
Okay. Take a charisma. I'll let you choose either empathy or leadership. Standard difficulty. Different roles will give you different results.
I'm going to go with leadership.
Okay. Alright, any specialties there?
Sadly not.
Okay.
But I'll take it.
4 successes, still very good. Your time over these next couple seasons is well spent building not just rapport and sympathy among the neonates, but building yourself as a kind of almost grassroots leader of values and ideals important to neonates, like protection from the depredations of elders. So much so that it begins to be taken notice by the elders in London. And for as much status as you've gained among the neonates and influence there, you've begun to now draw the notice of elders in equal measure of distaste and malevolence. Judith Stone is becoming more of a target, for better or worse. Keep a note somewhere that you got 4 successes on that. Remind me later. You do during this time receive word back by anonymous messenger that Ellen is aware of the trade, the exchange, and plans are being made for an assault on Carlisle at the beginning of next summer in 1456. Obviously, this is said in so many words and so much code, but that's the message you receive.
When the opportunity presents itself, I almost forgot about this earlier. She would seek out Tom Lafoy again and name drop Pierce Lockwood, someone he might want to speak with in Lincoln.
He takes note of it and seems genuine in following up. And we're going to turn back to Elined and Robert. You're also kind of encountering this downtime. As I recall, Elined at least was thinking of trying to reach out or connect with one or both of her companions. Hello? Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I can't hear Sarah. She's lighting up, I'm not hearing words. Yeah, I don't hear you.
Is it registering now?
Yes.
Yay!
Okay, yeah, I had to disconnect and reconnect because Discord can't go a single session without having some sort of problem.
Alright, remind me Elined's plans for other Gauntlet members.
Right, she intended to meet up with her other compatriots, and again, as mentioned before, the mind automatically drifted to London to, well, at least bring Cormac along to see what was at that location they were researching before.
Oh, importantly, both you and Robert hear by midsummer that Thomas Chamberlain is dead. He died at Lupines up north in Scotland.
Oh boy.
That's what you hear.
Were we that far into the thing with Elined?
I believe so. One way or
Since
another.
all she...
Go ahead.
Since she had significantly less to do.
Yeah, one way or another, by midsummer you both hear this news. I don't know if that changes if you want to go to the manor or not. Of course, you know the truth.
Of course
about
she
Thomas
knows.
Chamberlain.
And she has expressed wanting to feign her own death in order to bring out her second identity, so... Yes, she will seek them out.
Okay. So we'll say that by the end of summer, Elined pays a visit to the Chamberlain estate, where she finds Cormac and, in fact, Judith. And before we get too far into that, what is Robert's reaction to the news of Thomas Chamberlain dying?
It's actually sad. Well, they weren't on the greatest of terms, but he did consider him a companion.
Does that change anything he wants to do for the rest of 1455? Because you're mostly in Lincoln.
Mostly. It probably... the news itself, I don't think that will rush anything. Though he may send a message out. To London. To who though? I guess good question. Well, I suppose you won't worry about it at the moment because you can't even think of who to send a message out if the Chamberlain estate did go under. So, no, he'll remain in Lincoln until the time he's planning on heading to London to meet Elined.
And of course, you also know that your own financial affairs are in dire straits. You now are required to spend much of your night just keeping track of everything that's going on. There are many sources of your income, and that really taxes your ability to step away. You realize that Francois de Masson was... You think he would have had to been in over his head, but he was keeping it together this whole time.
Well, of course, he's been there before, trying to watch over the work Francois has been doing. He is, he certainly does need to get different arrangements in order.
You could probably step away from your estate for a couple of months, but much longer endangers that silver won't be picked up, that trades won't be completed, that certain arrangements won't be upheld. It gets riskier the farther out you go without coming back to manage these affairs.
When he gets a chance, we'll see if Francois had any apprentices.
Francois is now in the Tower of Lincoln and doesn't have time to speak with you.
And how does this message that he does not have time to speak with Robert come across?
You inquire at the Tower of Lincoln to find him or meet with him, and the guard relays that message, and then he comes back and tells you that. You're not sure if that came from Francois or Eden Everly or Colton Sardini. You're not really given an explanation.
Okay. By the way, are we going to cover what Robert found down there? Or is this like things that are happening? Yeah, I'm kind of confused on the timeline right now.
This is all kind of happening right up until that point.
Okay.
We will cover that probably in the next game, because I think that deserves more time than what we have left.
Okay, fair enough. Huh.
So, going back to Elined, you reunite with Cormac and Judith now. You have time to debrief after many months of being away. while they were supposedly in Scotland, and you've been commanding battles. The scene is yours.
Where does Elined find us then?
At the manor.
Yes, I know, but just to set a scene, I mean.
We'll say that you are in the study, the two of you, when Elined is escorted upstairs. The door closes behind you. The three of you are in the study alone, as in times past.
As soon as the doors close to the study, she speaks in fluent Scottish Gaelic. I do hope one of you could speak this rather well.
I'm sorry, come again?
And with that, she'll switch back to English. Nothing.
She was just making sure that we could have a conversation with the locals.
It turns out not a small number of them were also passably fluent in French.
Yes, French. I learned that shortly after my embrace. It's near impossible to go without using it.
I hate that language. It makes me sound like I'm talking with a stocking in my mouth.
It's almost impossible to conduct any kind of business on the continent without it.
I know that. He gestures dismissively. Anyway, how have you been? You've been busy, we hear.
Aye, that I have.
You've lain Ragnar upon a lofty perch.
I explained before I went there, did I not? That Barbaros has no purpose, no reason to be upon that. He's not worthy of the title of prince, is what I'm giving at.
Is that the only aim you hold? Simply unseating an unworthy prince?
You know me better than that.
Call it a rhetorical question.
No, there are the Inquisitors to deal with as well, and a number of other issues to deal with.
Such as?
The society we reside in is teetering. Unless it is reinforced, it will crumble.
What a shame.
Now, Cormac. Sustaining the status quo is a lofty ideal.
That wasn't kind of me, I'm sorry. But Barbaros has me in a fine fettle at this time. He's turned his eyes on Dublin for something they did not do.
Barbaros won't be a problem for much longer.
And if he's not, what then? Another Covenant prince will take his place. Eden Everly seems to be doing quite well for herself.
Yes, I am aware of your leanings. More importantly, it's a good thing you switched identities.
Oh, what have you heard?
I have been questioned regarding loyalties in some regard. Naturally, I tried to lessen how much these lied at Cormac, and more placed it at the feet of the one who had an identity to run to. In hopes that it might get him out of the way of any suspicion, though I suspect it won't eliminate all.
Cormac shakes his head angrily.
Judith is going to try and get a read on just how authentic Elined's actually being.
Perception, empathy, sanity, difficulty. Right, 3 successes. And Elined, if you want to hide any of your true feelings on this, I'll need a manipulation subterfuge.
On this specifically, she is, for the most part, speaking the truth. She is speaking more openly about the events of, well, Canterbury.
There you go.
And I wonder how far you'll go and how many you'll kill, whether directly or by those under your command, simply to bolster a crumbling bulwark.
There is no alternative that I have been presented with. None that is supported by fact.
The fact of the matter is, that which is old crumbles and is replaced by that which is new.
And then what is new will be corrupted and the cycle will continue.
I'm pragmatic enough to know that's not far from the truth. No system is perfect. But one does not see improvement by simply holding up that which is crumbling.
You have heard my thoughts on the matter last time. There simply isn't enough information in order to make an educated decision.
There is no information at all except that what is currently being done isn't working. And until something changes in that regard, you're asking for that which does not exist.
What are their ideals, their plans? What structure are they going to put in place? Or are they merely going to rehash what's already here?
We are savvy enough creatures to know when to be subtle, when to use subterfuge. Installing a hierarchy is not among their current plans, though one will be necessary. Has been throughout all human history, and through all canite history. However, the pinnacle above all else is the freedom of the individual to go where and when they choose, to serve those they choose to serve, without fear of reprisal. Chief among these ideals is the value of the very young, for without them, the race of Canaanites simply don't continue.
And you, Cormac, do you have anything to share on the matter?
My feelings are much in line with Judith's. The young are being wronged. Many of them will not survive things as they are now.
And those that do survive are scared to step one toe out of line. I'm sure you've seen it.
Yes, I have.
And that is what the system you support has wrought. The problem with revolutions is there's no guarantee that what they implement will be an improvement over what has fallen. It will be different. And the opportunity to create something better will be present. That cannot be said about the current status quo.
That is indeed the problem. For I have little reason to jump to another cause if that cause does not have a structure.
The cause you currently support is quickly losing its structure.
Part of it is crumbling, yes. But if the proper repairs are made, it can survive.
And ousting Barbaros, you think that will bulwark a failing structure?
Ousting Barbaros, I intend there to be chaos until it is reorganized.
And then driving out the Inquisitors, will that fix it?
That is a matter of safety. It is a hazard.
And would you then go seek to provide counsel to Ambrose? Calm his passions, so that he can rule as a more pragmatic prince?
I doubt anyone could do that.
And how would you temper Ragna's ambitions to rule all of England?
Ooh, mentioning Ragna's name. Can I make some sort of roll to hide any visible change at the mention of her name?
You only have one step blood bond, and right now, while she definitely enters your mind often, I'm not going to say that you're required to make any mechanical differences. I'm going to let you roleplay whatever you feel is appropriate.
She grimaces a bit at the mention of Ragna. Yes,
Surely.
she has her ambitions, but she is a stable ruler.
She's an aggressive expansionist. Surely you don't think she'll stop simply because she's reinstalled her favorite puppet in the role of Lord Protector?
I know that isn't going to just stop here. It's a matter with Barbaros himself.
You are not so naive to believe that she would stop with Barbaros.
At that point, it is a matter of analyzing the chaos and seeing what needs to be done.
Her own words betray her. She would seek to replace Prince Adam is the one liege over all Canaanites in England.
Perhaps. And I can see where you get this thought from. It is possible.
Judith chuckles, and it's kind of like the tinkling of bells. She's much more relaxed than Thomas ever was, that's obvious. She gave me the idea herself. Her own words. To my face.
I admittedly have not heard what you have heard.
You should ask her. If she trusts you as much as it would take her to place responsibility for the opening battle of a major war, I'm sure she'll tell you simply because you whispered the words. It took far less trust for her to tell Thomas the exact same. Then, she thought she simply had a potential ally in the gauntlet. Now,
With how guarded she is, if what you say is true, that will likely not be as easy as it once was.
no. I think for you it would be even easier. She believes she's found a kindred spirit. Someone who has utmost faith in her. I only hope that what she sees and what is reality aren't necessarily the same thing.
A look of reluctance goes across her face as she seems to be mulling about the thought of potentially saying something on that matter.
Do you want me to throw a new set of dice to pick up what she's putting down? Or does the current 3
I'll let it roll.
Judith's eyes narrow a bit. Yes. I believe she has you.
Cormac looks over to Elined, wondering what Judith's talking about.
You should be more cautious. You don't know who's watching you.
Oh, what have you heard?
I know it's only one stage one bond. Do you want me to do anything to try to get it out there that Ragna knows about their allegiance?
So you wish to roll to overcome this so that you can speak it freely?
That is so.
Let's see here. Yeah, Sure, I'll let you roll your willpower. Difficulty 5. Three successes. You feel like if you wanted to give up this information, you could.
She knows. She knows what side you're on. And even as she's saying this, it seems to not be something that is entirely as forthcoming as she has been in previous encounters.
And at that revelation, the scene fades.
Wow.
We will pick it up again next week.
Neat.
Good game.
Indeed.
Stuff happening. Things.
Things and places.
Yep.
And excitement.
So I don't think you were here, Judith, when I was saying this downtime is likely to segue into a longer one, probably going up to or through 1459. So several years of downtime. And before I forget, if anybody wants to slow me down and stop to open up a scene like Scott did, definitely speak up, because otherwise I'll assume everyone's good with the pace I'm at. And if anyone does want to take more detail to look into something like, wait, I want to know more about this, then definitely speak up so that I know. That's what I appreciate.
Cool.
But yeah, we are going to do probably more downtime. This is the end of a major chapter and beginning of another major chapter. And we're going to blue book through more of this time period next game. But I would like you guys to think hard about what you guys will be doing over the next few years. And of course, some of that's going to depend on how things unravel. And some of that's going to involve Carlisle, obviously. And so we'll be stopping here and there to open up scenes. But overall, we're going to start moving through years a lot more quickly as we get into the meat of the game. So that's kind of coming up. So with that said, 2 experience all around. And since it's the end of a major chapter, everyone can regain your full willpower. And let's do some entertaining role players. We'll start with Elined.
Gonna give it to Judith for finally going through with that false death.
We'll see how long the ruse remains.
Okay, and Judith.
I'm gonna give it to Elined. She definitely played up her reluctance and fought against the beginnings of Blood Bond to pass on some necessary deep.
Mm-hmm. Cormac.
I'm going to give it to Judith for the uncomfortable scene telling McDougal the dirty...
Look, she kept her top on. That's all that matters.
Ha! For now.
The dirty deed. And Robert.
I give it to Cormac.
Cool. And 2 all around. Okay, great game. I will see you guys next week to pick it up again.
Alrighty.
Cool. Have a good night.